I'll show you a simple and powerful setup that will get you up and running with Neovim as your IDE. After this video, you'll have everything you need to start using Neovim right away and having a good time with it, but you'll also have an understanding of how you can build on this. We're going to be using all the newest tools that are being actively maintained, such as the Lazy Package Manager. I'm Alex, and here on Zazen Codes, I teach full stack data science. Being proficient in the terminal is an important engineering skill, and this video will help with that. You can head over to my Patreon to get free resources like my Notion Second Brain repository, and you can sign up there to get video walkthroughs of my notes. I recently upgraded my Vim config to use Lua. Well, one thing led to another, and 20 plus wasted, well-used hours later, I'd completely overhauled my Vim setup. So in this video, I'm going to share what I learned with you and give you the easy way of doing what I did so that you can get 80% of the results of my setup with only 20% or less of the work. In fact, I think you can copy and paste the exact configuration that I'm going to give you and get up and running immediately with Neovim as a great IDE in 2024. Let's go. Step one is installation. I'm going to flash some recipes on the screen that you can use to install this depending on your operating system. Make sure that you verify your installation by restarting your terminal and running nvim. If this doesn't work, then you'll have to figure out where you installed the program and ensure that it's in your path variable. This path variable is an environment variable that specifies the directories to be searched to find a command. So even though you've installed Neovim, when you type nvim in your command line, your computer might not know where to look for that binary. It could be installed to the wrong place. So there's two ways of addressing this. The first is that you can change your path variable to include the folder that has Neovim installed in it. The other option would be to change where Neovim is installed so that it's going to a place that's already in your path variable. Or you could set up an alias that sidesteps the path variable altogether. We'll also install ripgrep, so I'll flash some recipes for that on the screen as well. This is a dependency for the absolutely beautiful plugin called Telescope that lets you do file searching in Vim. Once this is installed, you can verify that it's working by typing rg --version. And lastly, you'll also need to make sure you have a recent version of Git installed. This is important so that you can install the Lazy Package Manager, which we're going to do soon. The next thing I'm going to do is set up an alias so that when I type Vim in the command line, that actually opens nvim. Unix operating systems have an RC file. And fun fact, this name was inspired by the runcom facility of Unix's grandparent CTSS, which would run commands. So that's the same idea with modern RC files. And here's the files I'm referring to. You can see that the file itself will be named differently depending on your operating system. In my case, mine is called ZSHRC because I'm using Z shell. So open this up and add a line like this in order to alias Vim to Neovim. After you do that, you can open a new terminal window or source the file so that that becomes active. This could also be a solution if Neovim is not in your path variable. You could simply alias Vim to the full path to the binary of Neovim. So now it's time for the fun part. Let's build out our config and make Neovim into a great IDE by installing the packages that we want. There are a ton of different ways to do this, and it can get pretty complicated. So I'm going to try to make everything really minimal and easy. And if you watch this video to the end, I think you'll be able to understand everything that we did here so that you can add to it or subtract from it in order to create the exact customized setup that you want. First, you need to know where Neovim is going to look for your configuration. So if you open it up and type help runtime path, you'll be able to pull up a help documentation like this, and you can see where Neovim is looking for this config. In my case, I know that it's going to be looking in the .config file in my home user directory. And inside of here, if I type ls, you can see a bunch of configurations that I have for other things on my computer. And there's one in here called nvim. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So now if I open up Vim, it still works, but I don't have any of my plugins. Let's go ahead and create these. I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it nvim. And then I'm going to go into it. I'm going to create a init.lua. And then I'm going to create a Lua folder. So how this works is that Neovim is going to look in the init.lua file, and that has to delegate where we're going to put our actual configuration, because it would be too messy to just throw it all into one file. I want to have a keymaps file, keymaps.lua. I want a similar file for options. So I'm going to say touch options.lua. I actually want these files to be inside of my Lua folder. So I'm just going to move them in there. Okay, now this is what I want to see. So when I open up my init.lua, I can say require keymaps and require options. Now I'm going to open up my keymaps, and there's one really important keymap. I want my leader to be the spacebar, so I'm going to make sure I set that right away. For now, I'm just going to set an option of relative line numbers just for reference, so you can see that it's working. And we'll go through the rest of my options later. And now when I open up Vim, you can see there's relative line numbers happening. I should get my keymaps up. So what I was doing was hopping, say, up 3 or, down 7. The next thing I want to do is install Lazy. This is going to be my plugin manager. What I want to do is make a directory called lua.plugins. Then I want to create a file in there called lazy.lua. Then in my init, I need to load that, right? So I want to do that before these, and I'll say plugins.lazy. But actually I want to do it after. Okay, right. So I'll set my keymaps, my options, and then I'll load these plugins. So the order of operations matters here, and we're going to use that in our configuration. I have something like this, and I'm going to open up Lua plugins Lazy, and we're going to install Lazy here. So if I go to the Git repository for Lazy, I can see an install script, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to paste that in here. I'm just going to snag my config that I've shared in the Git repo, and I'll just sort of do this for now. So nothing's been installed other than Lazy. So if I go ahead and open this up and I type :lazy, I should be able to open up a menu like this. Now I'm going to clean things up because these were probably from before. I don't want to be working with a clean and quite beautiful setup. Even though I love this default pink Lazy view, I'm going to get a nice color scheme. The color scheme we're going to install is called Cat Poochin. And I have the Git repository open here. And the general theme or way that we install plugins is to look for something like this. And I'm going to copy this line here. And with our configuration, we can open up the Lua plugins Lazy file. And we can go down to this require Lazy setup and just paste that in like this. So it's an element of our setup array. So I'm going to indent that a little bit. So that's how we're going to do it. And then we can keep adding plugins here. After we install something, we can quit out of Vim. And if I just go ahead and load up Vim, we should see that plugin automatically being installed by Lazy. The next plugin is called Telescope. So let's open that up, and we're going to install this guy. I can scroll down, and I can try and find an example of config with lazy.nvim. Open up this part, and as promised, I'm just going to paste it under here. Okay, yeah. So this is what I'm talking about. That's Telescope. So let's go ahead and install it. So it's doing that work. And now in order to use Telescope, I need to set up some keymaps. So I actually want a new file to do that. I want a file that's going to be in my plugins folder, and it's going to be called keymaps.lua. So I'll go into my init and make sure that I have that loading correctly. Okay, that's good. And then I'm going to open that file up, and I'm going to add the keymaps that I want for Telescope. This should give us access to leader fs in order to find files. So let's try that out. I'm going to reload everything, and now I'm going to type spacebar fs. And now Telescope has come up, and I can search for my files this way. Another thing I can do is type leader fz, and this will let me grep stuff. So I can type maybe Lua, and you can see it's searching inside of my files here. Remember, I did leader as the space bar, and so if I type space, I'm seeing that file of my keymaps. Then I can just press enter to open it, and within here I can keep opening files. this is great, but what I'm doing is I'm creating buffers, right? So I can sort of navigate through these using BP and BN, but you can't see that I have multiple buffers open. And there's a great plugin that's gonna help us manage these buffers. So the next plugin we want is a file tree, and this is gonna start helping us work better with actually what we're doing right now and installing the rest of our plugins. So I'm gonna go back into my plugins directory, and I'm gonna grab some code from my Git repository and hop back and paste that in here. And so this is our file tree. So I'll get out of here and reload it, and it's going to install our file tree. And now the next thing I need to do is set up a key map so that we can use our file tree like we want to. And I use leader E for that. I'm going to go into Lua plugins key maps, and because this is like a plugin, I'm going to put this in this file here. And what it's going to say is that this NVim tree find toggle is going to map to leader E. So if I quit out of that and get back into Vim, now I can press space E and I can toggle my tree in and out, and I can sort of navigate through here and open up files and work on them. We can also use this to create new files. So for example, I might want a plugins options file. So let's create that now. I'm going to say options.lua, and it just goes ahead and creates that, and it's just an empty file. And then in my init.lua, I want to require that so that we can have options here. So what options do we want to put in that? Why did I create that file? Well, I have a few here, and I'm going to just sort of copy them from my Git repository. And we are going to go, let's see, if I go back, this is my options file. I'll paste them in here. So I'm setting the color scheme, and I'm doing some stuff for this Bufferline plugin. I'll go down below my file tree and I'll paste this in my Bufferline, and I'll get out of here, and I'm just going to quit Vim and reload it in order to install that. Now that that's been installed, I can open up my buffers, and you can see the color scheme's updated because of this option that I set. And now what I can do is if I open up, like, say, a few files, do you see how there's tabs now at the top? And it's keeping track of all of these. So now you can easily tell, like, I want to go to the previous one or the next one, and you can see them there. So this is another key component of using Neovim as an IDE. I need to add a few key maps that I use to get around buffers. There's this keymaps.lua that's not in the plugins folder. So this is where I'm going to put everything that's like not related to a plugin, but just a Vim thing in general. And since buffers are just a Vim thing, that's where this configuration belongs. So here's what I use. I do leader N, P, and X, which copies the tmux way of working with its panes. Leader N will go to the next one, leader P will go to the previous one, and leader X will close that buffer. So what I can do now is probably we'll need to restart everything, and I can open up like a few things, a few buffers. Let's open up my keymaps one. And now I can just press space P, space N to hop between those. If I want to close this, I press space X. And this will let me work like really fast with my stuff, hopping around as I need to. That's in addition to what we've already installed with our telescope, where I can just kind of open up stuff this way. And just let me work really fast, right? In addition, Vim has the concept of panes, right? So this is built into Vim. It's nothing we're going to install today, but you do leader W and then V, and that'll let you split the panes. And then I can do leader W, and then I can move through my panes. This is also how I can get in and out of my file tree. So leader W, and then to the left, leader W to the left, to the right. Next, we're going to install a Markdown preview plugin and a comment plugin. These do like totally separate things, but they're in the same realm as like pretty useful to have as an IDE. So let's put down my Markdown preview here, and here are my comments. So I'll save this and get out of everything and come back. We're now installing our Markdown preview and our NVim comment. And in order to show you what this looks like, I can just open up like a readme.markdown file, open that up and say title, and then something. Now the way Markdown preview works is it gives me access to something called Markdown preview toggle. And once I run that, it'll open up my Markdown file in Chrome. And then what I can do is actually make changes and see them reflected in real time. So if I keep adding stuff here and save that, it'll show that in in the live preview. So this is really like extremely helpful. I love this plugin. And next, what I want to do is create a shortcut for that, because I don't want to have to type this whole like Markdown preview thing every single time. So that again goes into plugins, and that is a key map that I want to create. And here's the key map. I want to select leader MP or set leader MP to this Markdown preview toggle. Now, if I just say leader MP, it'll just open that up. Now let's see how the comment one works. In order to use this, we can use comment toggle. So if I go into a Lua program and say I want to do this one, and I say comment toggle, it's just going to comment that. And if I have these two lines selected and I say comment toggle, it should do both of those lines. The key map that I want is, I'm going to snag it from my Git repo, is like this. So let's quit out of this, get out of everything. Oops, quit out of, oh my goodness. Okay, quit out of this. We want these, I don't care, whatever, get out of here. Okay. God. Okay, we're coming back. We're back in here. So now what I can do is, let's remind us what we did, right? So I did leader and then backslash. So that's this, right? And that's how I want to be able to manage my comments. And so I can sort of bulk select and uncomment a bunch of stuff that way. Great. All right, we are rolling. Okay, now just so that you have everything in front of you before we get into this crazy language server stuff, which is incredibly important for you being able to use Vim as an IDE, I'm just gonna throw the rest of my configuration at you and we'll just get that up and running. So the first thing, I'll put these buffers back, and then I love this. This is like the best, yank to clipboard. So if I have something selected and I type leader Y, it's now gonna yank that and put it in my clipboard. That way I can go over to like Google Chrome or something and I can paste that text in, or any other app. This has like changed my life. I'm probably gonna make an entire video just on this one command, but anyway, that's something that I'm gonna put in here. And that's just a Vim thing. There's no plugins needed for that. Okay, now I have a bunch of Vim options, and I'm not gonna go through all of these, but what I did was I added comments. So in my Git repo, you can see those comments, and you can basically go through these like line for line and decide if they're things you want or not. And I'm just gonna check that all of these are pretty much out of the box. The only one is this Python 3 guy. I'm gonna talk about that later when I'm talking about LSP and all our language server stuff. But for now, I'm just gonna throw all of those in. Okay, so this is the exciting part of the video where we get to install LSP, and this is where things get pretty crazy and really complicated. And I spent a lot of time looking into this. And if you're looking at my Git repo in the README, you'll notice a certain step 4 that is very much to do with this. So ignoring step 4, for now at least, let's just stick with me, and we're gonna try and install like a totally minimal LSP setup using the internet. So there's something called LSP ZERO, and this makes it pretty easy to do. And inside of their Git repository, they have a link to a Markdown document that has lazy loading instructions. And I'm gonna look at this automatic setup of LSP servers, and I'm gonna just copy this sucker right here. And what we're gonna do is put that right into our lazy, and I'm gonna go down to the bottom and just paste that in. This is gonna give us access to a language server so that we can edit files and get type hints and syntax highlighting and all of that stuff you need to edit code. In order to like see what this looks like, right, I'm gonna create a test file, and inside of this, I'm gonna create a Python test file, poorly format it on purpose, put pandas as PD, but you'll notice like it's not giving me any type hints here. And if I try and use pandas, nothing's coming up, right? I'm not getting any help with these things that I want to do. Test.js, and I'll do something similar for JavaScript. Okay, cool. So we've got like some code that we can sort of test. So let's quit out of Vim, and I want to load all of these changes back. And here we go. We're installing the language servers that we just picked up from this LSP ZERO. So it just went ahead and installed all of that stuff. Cool. And let's see if we have any improvement in our files. So there's some syntax highlighting that just applied. Ooh, and when I type let, we're kind of seeing some suggestions, right? Some come up here. So that's great. Now I'm not really a JavaScript native kind of guy. But if I do require, maybe we can see some stuff. Let's see, if I do my Python file, that's gonna be a lot better for me. Okay, so pandas cannot be resolved. That's great. It's like trying to find these packages for us, right? D is not accessed. Okay, so great. So, it wants to see D, so it's doing linting for us, right? Now, there's no automatic highlighting yet, and since pandas wasn't resolved, it couldn't help us there. But the default library is regular expressions, right? So if I wanted to do something with that, you can see how it's helping us now. And this is just from that config that I just pasted in from Lazy, right? Online, it's already doing this for us. So this is fantastic. This is absolutely what we need. So the first thing missing is, for me, a way to format code. So what I want to do is go into my keymaps, and I want to create a way to do that. So I'm going to paste in this leader FM, which is going to let me format code. Actually, I want to say FMD. So this is going to format code using the default method. It's going to just go ahead and try and do that using LSP. Quit out of everything and get back a test file that I have for JavaScript. And so I want to format this. So I'm going to say leader FMD. Boom, it formatted it. So now I want to do the same thing for my Python file. Okay, great. So leader FMD. Format request failed, no matching language servers. We need to get this working. Okay, this is part of a minimum viable IDE for me. I find that I have to install Python as a global package on my computer so that I can just say black, right, like this in my terminal. So I do that with Homebrew. So I'll do brew install black, and I already have that installed. Once you have access to that, you'll be able to use the trick that I'm showing you here, and it's going to be a key map. Okay, so black Python formatting, and I want to do FMP, and it's going to call this silent black and then end. So this sort of exclamation mark black %, that's calling my system-wide black executable on the current file, and then pressing enter. I'll show you how that looks. We want to be able to format this, and I'll say FMP. Boom. All right, so it worked. Now let's just sort of go the extra mile and get some of these things cleaned up. For example, you want to use pandas, right? Let's get that in business. The first thing I'm going to do is go into my lazy.lua, and I'm going to add something at the bottom here so that we're able to use a specific version of Python. I want to tell Neovim what version of Python to look for on my system. I'm going to paste in what we want to do with our Python environment, and I'm going to make sure it's all working good. Okay, so what's happening here? The next thing I need to do is ensure that we have our Python language server installed properly, and we're going to be using Pyrite, which is right here. Okay, cool. So now that we have Pyrite, we're going to go down and we're going to say, we're going to set that up explicitly. And this part right here is where I'm going to tell Neovim where to look for Python on my system. And I have a virtual environment that I use for all things related to Neovim. I'm still working on how to integrate this better, and I have a more complicated setup, but I'm just showing you a minimum viable setup that you can customize. And what you would do then is you would have to make sure that this matches a path of some Python you have installed on your computer. I'll show you what I mean by that. Let me get out of here, and I'm going to go to a file I have called virtual-ems. This is a directory on my computer, and I just put stuff here. I put virtual environments here. So what I would do is I would say Python, and I would make sure I'm using Python 3, and I would say -m, and I would say virtual environment. And then what I could do here is I could say nvim test. Let's just do that. Okay, so this is a brand new environment we're going to make right now, and I'm going to hook this up to Neovim. Next, I'm going to say nvim test, and I'm going to say pip or bin/pip install. And I want to install something just to test that this is working. Now, requests is a library that doesn't come default with Python, right? So let's install that. and we're gonna check that I can get requests in Neovim now. So I'll go back to my config folder here, and let's just show you where I am now. And if I open back up Neovim and go into our little view here, what do I want to do? Well, I was sort of messing around in this file here, right? This lazy file, and it's right at the bottom. And I had this virtual environment called nvim VM, right? But I just changed that. So I think I called it nvim test. So now that that's been loaded, I'm gonna open this back up, and so pandas still can't be resolved, but we expect that, right? Because we don't have it installed. But if I if I do requests, it looks like it knows about this one. There. So then I can come down here and I can say like requests, if I can type dot. Okay, great. So get put would be here, session would be here. Okay, cool. So this is working, right? So what about pandas, right? Okay, well, let's resolve our pandas issue. Again, I'm gonna quit out all this stuff. I'm gonna go back to that virtual environment, which is here, and let's install that. So I'll say nvim test pip, bin install, and we wanted pandas, right? So let's get that. Okay, hop back into our config and get what we want opened up, which was our PyTest. And now look, pandas is being found, and to prove it to you, I could say pd dot, and then now I'm getting all my completion like I want. You can also check out the Dotfiles repo I have for my actual environment that I use day to day. And that'll maybe give you some inspiration or other ideas that you can do to keep building this out better. So we're pretty much at the end here. There's one last thing I'm gonna show you called auto session. And this is so key, and I should have installed this a while ago, and it would have helped me out a lot during this demo, but I forgot about it. So I'm gonna put this above all my LSP stuff because I just want that to be like at the end of my lazy, and I always want to just keep it at the bottom there. So if I go above it, I can paste in this auto session here, and I'm gonna get out of this and do one last time, opening everything up. It'll install auto session, and now you're gonna see something totally beautiful. And when I close this, let's say I have my some of these test files open, and let's say everything looks like this, and I'm gonna just sort of quit out. I don't know what I did there. So I'll quit out. Now when I come back, it's gonna load the same buffers that I had opened before. If I was to sort of cd into this Lua directory and then open it up here, there's no buffers open in here, right? So nothing's open. But let's say I had this keymaps file open and I don't know, something in my plugins, and now I quit, and I quit out of here. And now when I go back to like config and I open that up, I have a bunch of stuff. Okay, nothing was open here, but let's go back into nvim and open that up. Okay, I have all my buffers open from nvim, and then I can quit out of that, and I was in that Lua directory, right? So if I was to open vim from that Lua directory, oops, might have to do it this way. There, you can see these previous files I had open. So what it's doing is it's automatically creating a session for each folder on your computer and then associating the buffers that you have open in that session. So simple, right? And this is just how like VS Code works out of the box. And now we have that functionality in Neovim. If you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate it if you could give me a like and consider subscribing. As a new channel, this really helps get my content discovered. A big part of my Neovim configuration that I didn't share with you here is how I use it as a second brain. So if you're interested in that, you can follow the link at the end of this video and see how I use Neovim to take notes with Obsidian and why I love this for documenting my thoughts, my ideas, and certain facts that I come across and being able to resource that knowledge later. And if you love the content that I'm producing, I think you'll also love the content that I have on Patreon. So you can go over there to download my second brain repository on Notion, and you can sign up as a supporter to get video walkthroughs of my notes. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Namaste.